Welcome back to the channel, everyone. Behind me is a John Deere 650 subcompact tractor. These tractors have a 2-cylinder Yanmar diesel engine that are actually built by Yanmar, but this one specifically has been sitting for about 15 years. The guy who I'm fixing it for has had it for 8 years, and he said he has never had it running, and when he got it, it had been sitting for many years. So the guy's already done some work to it. He cleaned out the fuel system, I think, and the fuel tank, and had a different mechanic look at it, and he said it has low compression and has to be rebuilt. But they also said they were never able to get fuel to the injectors. So let's do a quick walk around and then dive right in. As you can see, it's already been washed off. My dad washed it off for me, and it's got the, I assume this is a John Deere loader, 67. It's also 4-wheel drive, which is nice. It's got a Johnson workhorse backhoe on it. That thing's pretty cute. You can see it has 4-wheel drive lever, shifter, high-low, differential lock. Got the loader controls here. Overall, the thing is in pretty good, the actual tractor is in pretty good shape. The backhoe's pretty rough. Most of the loader looks pretty good, except for the bucket. You can see we got some holes. Got the tachometer in place. Dummy lights. Looks like the light switch knob was broken off. Fuse box. Here's the fuel lever and a gas pedal. Okay. Little baby diesel in here. Looks like he put new battery cables on it. That's nice. Where's the oil dipstick? Oh yeah, it's all the way up to the top there. Coolant right up to the top. Let's make sure there's no mouse nest in the air filter. Filter looks brand new. Looks like he put a new fuel filter in it too, which he did tell me he did that. Engine oil looks clean, maybe a little bit overfilled. We have these plunger injectors that are kind of built into the block there. It doesn't have a separate mounted injection pump. First step, let's see if we can get it cranking. It does seem like it's cranking over pretty easy. I didn't even see any smoke coming out. This throttle lever, you come back to where there's a detent that's idle, keep coming back, that shuts off the fuel. So we want to make sure it's all the way forward in full fuel position. So now let's see if we're getting fuel to the injection pump, we'll call it. Okay, so our filter here looks like there's a C and O. I'm gonna maybe spin this so it's in the O position. Maybe that means open. And we can follow that fuel line over to this screw and see we are in fact getting plenty of fuel flow. Now let's crack the injector, the high pressure injection lines. Okay, I'm gonna crack these lines at the injectors and then also at that pump. Okay, now let's crank it. See if we get fuel out of those injectors. Getting fuel out of this one. tighten that one up. I'm not getting any fuel out of that front line. Okay, we need to try and get fuel from both injection lines. I'm getting fuel from that back line, but I don't think it's enough. So there's a rack that slides back and forth that adjusts the fuel to each cylinder. And if that rack gets stuck, it can prevent the fuel from flowing. So we got this cover off to the side of the engine here, and check this out. Okay, so I kind of bent that governor arm because the rack in there was seized. I thought it was the governor arm, but so this whole thing can come out. And you can see that rack is seized. See, I bent that pin, but we should be able to get that back. Okay, and there's shims here because you have to set the clearance between these rollers and the camshaft there. So remember how this injector was working? Look, that one, the actual injection plunger is seized in there because that should spring back. See how that one is pressed down, but this one, that plunger inside there is seized. Okay, I'm gonna tap this rack. Well, it's moving. Alright, I'm gonna let this soak with that penetrating oil in it. Okay, got this rack freed up. That goes back and forth super easy now. The one plunger is still a tiny bit sticky, but they both come back now, so running it, or hopefully running it, will make it free up a little bit more. Just gonna use this former gasket in between the shims. It's important, you can't use silicone when there's shims because the silicone is too thick. This former gasket will be very thin, maybe between the couple layers of this stuff, 1/1000th of an inch at the most thickness. Whoops, don't drop it. Now I'm gonna have to go in that access port and pry the governor to the side a little bit so that the rack falls in place. Now, I only have one bolt here and 3 lock washers, so I'm gonna have to look for these. All the hardware's accounted for. Nothing is in the engine. Tighten these down evenly because one of the plungers could be depressed. So just go slow. A lot of people say don't use an impact on anything, but if you're careful, go slow, take your time with everything, and you won't have a problem with an impact. That cover's back on, fuel line is back on, injection lines are back on and loose, so let's start cranking and get these bled. Isn't cranking fast enough, or my booster pack's gonna die. Okay, I got the injection pump back apart. It did not run that first time I cleaned it out, so I put it in the ultrasonic cleaner and got everything much cleaner. The actual pump body is very clean in there. I'm gonna go through and clean more of these by hand and then throw it together and put it on the tractor tomorrow because it's raining. So we got some music going. I'll give you guys a time lapse, and I'm gonna get a light set up and let's get this done. Okay, there it is, all together. Hopefully right this time. The strategy, you got to put in the whatever those plungers are in there first, and they hold the gears that get lined up with this timing with the rack here, because you have to get, there's a notch on that gear and a mark on the rack. Okay, back for round 3. It's the next day. Got the injection pump back together last night. So let's throw this pump in and then see what happens. Okay, got the pump in, lines on. Let's see what happens. Fuel out of both cylinders. We're getting smoke out of the exhaust now. Okay, I'm not sure if that intake heater's working, so I got one right here. Thinking maybe I want to pop those injectors out now. See if they're maybe clogged up. Alright, I think I found one other problem. We've got more exhaust coming out the engine than the exhaust pipe. Okay, so clearly we have exhaust gases getting through either the head gasket, which I doubt because the radiator is completely full, or we have a cracked piston, which I also kind of doubt, or like a cracked block, which is unlikely, or the piston rings are seized from sitting, which is likely. So I obviously took the valve cover off. The valve movement looks fine. I cranked it over, no issues there. Oil squirts out of the top of the rockers though, so it kind of makes a mess. Then I took the manifold off, and I cranked the engine over so that each exhaust valve would be open, and then I just pumped some oil down each of the cylinders, and that should take up some of that space around the piston and increase our compression. So I'm going to throw the valve cover back on and let's see what happens. Okay, take whatever, see what happens. Need some thicker oil. Okay, let's try this again, but this time with 80W90. This engine is not looking too hot right now. Alright, I just tried again with ADW90. Look at all the smoke coming out of the engine. This thing's shot. Okay, so with the excessive blow-by, I need to tear into this engine more. So, I'm gonna drain the coolant out now. I'm gonna take it off. Okay, we'll just let that drain for a while. Okay, now I want to take the radiator off just to get it out of the way. Make it easier to work on the engine. Alright, it's the next afternoon, or the next evening, and it's kind of that time of year where it's too hot to actually do stuff outside. Otherwise you're sweating, so you gotta wait till the evening, and then it's nice and cool. It's easy to get stuff done, so let's get this torn down. Now with the hood and radiator out of the way, it makes it pretty easy to get to this engine. First thing I did is pull the water pump off. A couple of those bolts were a little tough, but I got them with some PB Blaster and being careful. Then I could pull the injection lines off. And I already have the exhaust manifold off, so that's out of the way, and the intake manifold can remain in place. So the next thing I did is pull the rocker shaft off, and then these two hydraulic lines have to come off, and unfortunately they were pretty stuck. Yanmar or John Deere, whoever designed it, decided to use those flare NPT fittings, or I don't know if they're straight thread or tapered, but it is quite hard to remove them. So little heat and PB Blaster did the trick there, and then you can move them up just enough to slide the head up out of the way. Now we can break loose the head bolts in a crisscross pattern, making sure not to warp the head, and then it should be ready to pull right up. Okay, unfortunately, we didn't find our obvious problem. Fortunately, the pistons are both in one piece. I can see an issue with these cylinder walls. There's 0 crosshatch left. There's vertical marks, not necessarily scratches, but you can see there are no diagonal crosshatch left. So I'm pretty certain that the rings are seized to the pistons, so we have to get those pistons out, and to do that we have to take the oil pan off. Here's the head after being rinsed briefly. You can see that one cylinder has quite a bit of rust on it. Same with the other one, a decent amount. There aren't any noticeable problems with these. The head gasket, I don't see any issues with it. Alright, so I got this cross member here off, and I was trying to take this drive shaft off, but I don't know that I even have to do that. So I took all the bolts off the oil pan, but before we take that oil pan off, better drain the oil. Looks maybe a little bit shiny, but nothing really out of the ordinary. There's the oil pan, and that's looking up into the crankcase. I don't see any issues. I wiggled both the rod bearing caps, and there was no play. So I'm going to take those caps off, and we'll get these pistons out. Well, would you look at that? I would say there's your problem, lady. Look at how those rings are completely seized. So those upper two rings, right by my fingernail and right there, are the compression rings. And they should be and yeah, this oil ring is pretty seized too, but these rings should pop right out. So if I could get these rings out without breaking them, we could probably, I would say confidently, we could reuse them, hone these cylinders out, and that it would run fine. But I'm still gonna look for new rings because the chances that I get these out without breaking them are pretty slim. And the exact same issue on this piston. And you can actually see where the compression has been leaking down. But these pistons look in good shape. There's a tiny bit of scratching there, but can't even feel it on your fingernail. The top bearings are showing a little bit of wear. The bottom bearings look brand new. Actually, there's a little bit of wear on the outside, but that would make sense. That would make sense that the top bearings have more wear because that's the force is pushing down on the crankshaft. This is good though. We can confidently say that we found the issue with this engine and why there was such excessive blow-by. So I'm gonna get this cleaned up, order some parts, and we'll come back later. Might have spoken too soon in that last clip about the extent of the problems with this engine. We did find one of the problems, but you'll have to wait until the next video to find out more. This video would just be too long if I tried to squeeze it all into one part, so stay tuned for the next one. I'll leave you guys with this beautiful clip of Mousom Lake in Maine. So thank you for watching if you made it this far, and I'll see you in the next one.